Welcome, everyone. This is my friend Steph, and she has been following actually Dolores for a while, Dolores Cannon, and she did a QHHT session with me last week. So it's been a week out from your session, Steph, and I'm curious to hear how it landed for you. It's not even that much time, right? So sometimes over time, people will have more things kind of integrate. And let's just start with how you feel the session went, how it's integrating for you, and after I might have
Okay.
more
Well, do
questions or
you,
comments to
there goes the
share.
dog from the inside. If I was inside, it'd be worse. I don't know if everybody on here knows what the QHHT is, but it's like a hypnosis. Well, you could explain it better after if you want to. Hypnosis healing technique. So it's, people think of doing hypnosis for just to quit a bad habit or to hypnotize yourself into a different way of something. But I feel like this is more of a technique for you're kind of more aware while the process is going on. I didn't know, I'd never had anybody done it to me. I've only read about what it's like, and read about what people are saying when they're under this type of hypnosis. But you're not like asleep, which I think some people might think like you're out. And I didn't know what to expect. So I think, the analytical side of me is thinking, and it was thinking as soon as I came out of it, like, oh, wow, okay, it's kind of an interesting place of like, you're still conscious and aware of what's going on, but you still have to use a bit of brain power and your cognitive sense to like put words into what's coming. And I didn't know going in, if you expect to just, you lie there and your mouth moves for you, I didn't know exactly what to kind of expect, but it was interesting. And then I think it takes a little bit of time to get that feeling, right?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And we kind of talked about this, I guess, before and after your session, that there is a certain amount of practice and work that the client themselves is actually doing. And it's very different. So some people, Dolores goes somnambulistic and they do kind of fall asleep. Their conscious mind fully falls asleep. They can take on completely different personalities, speak different languages, and a lot of her books are written from people who had those kind of experiences. But her books are written from like a very small percentage of most of the people that she worked with. So most people are still going to be very kind of aware and conscious, but also have like all this other stuff that they're accessing in their mind that's coming through. And it is like the
Mhm.
first time I did it, I felt like new sensations in my brain and in my head that I felt my like prefrontal cortex I think just like ignite, and like I was like, oh my God, what is this feeling happening in my brain physically? So yeah, it's very, very interesting. And Dolores started it as a hypnosis healing just for weight loss and addictions. And then people started accessing very different information. They started going into past lives. So it's often known for kind of a type of past life regression, but past life regression is under the umbrella of QHHT. And you kind of had a very interesting experience because your experience was more quantum, right? And more, you didn't even really see a past life necessarily. So that was interesting. But before we dive into that, can you talk a bit more about how that felt to kind of be consciously aware, but also have the images come in? Like, was that hard for you to
Yeah, like, I
navigate when
mean,
you
I
were
wasn't
first
sure,
navigating it?
being a cognitive analytical, type person, if, how smoothly it would even go. But you're definitely in a different state, and, you're not imagining things, right? So I think I knew enough to know, like, no, I'm not imagining this. Stuff is coming, but then your analytical mind's kind of going, well, what is, and then you still have to like put the words is you're at, because if you didn't, as a guide, you have to be, you're very good at this. Like you have to, and when I was listening back to it, I was like, wow, she's really good at this, because you have to ask the right questions. You have to keep the person engaged, or you'll just be there in another world in your brain, and you won't say a word unless you're asked to say a word, which is you're still having the experience. But the guidance, especially I think when you're new to it, is very, very needed. If I did that 10 times, it probably would be very different. But for the first time, yeah, I had to, and there was sometimes you would ask like, what are you seeing, right? Or tell me what you see. And I think our brain initially, when you hear that word see, the eyes go back to the front of the head when they were very deep and you were kind of more out and in the back of, like they rolled back. And then I literally think when you would ask, what do you see? Or look, the word look, your eyes go forward. And it's like, now you're kind of just looking at the colors of the back of your eyelid, you know, and you're like, no, I was back. You have to, it's like you're looking at the back of your brain, but you're not asleep. But like, it's a very interesting feeling. So I noted that it's,
that was an interesting thing that you said, that you were like, oh, my eyes have to stay rolled back. And I love that, connecting these kind of more subtle things and meditation experiences to very physical experiences in the body, right? So, and I think everyone might feel it differently. Like I had that like strange feeling in the front of my brain. You were very aware that, okay, I'm, when she asks me to see, I'm trying to see with my eyes, with my eyeballs, but I have to connect to my inner vision, right? And it's being able to see with our inner vision, that if that it's what we use when we're dreaming, and we have, when we see things in our dreams, we're not seeing them with our eyeballs, we're seeing them with our inner sight. And so I think
that's
QHHT is a
yeah
great
that
practice
is
to be
what
able to
it's like. You're
develop that inner
listening, and then
sight.
and while you're doing it, because these certain thoughts or things, or you know, a word to describe, if it's just a feeling in the body, is coming through, and you have to still use a bit of brain power to put the word to the feeling, or the word to the vision, you know, while you're, because you're kind of like, it's almost like you don't even want to bother to say, but you got to still say it. So you have to put a little bit of effort's the word, into that, but you don't want to, then but you get stuck in,
Yes.
well, am I making this up? But then you're like, but why is this coming?
Yeah.
Like you're not, it's just coming. It's coming from something else. So it's an interesting feeling. And I think when you use the questions more of what's happening instead of the look, maybe this isn't for everybody, but just for me, the look or seeing made me like go back to like eyeballs and, you know, seeing in front. But then, you know, if you said like what's happening, maybe then it was like I could stay like back there more and be like, this is what's happening. Because the looking distinction, your brain automatically thinks I'm going to use my eyeballs now, because of that word, right? But so that was, yeah, I got one.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. Yeah, because everyone is different. Some people think that they can't see at all. So that's a very good point. That's why there's the question, like, what are the first impressions that you get? That's one of the other questions. And what do you feel? And you, when you first came in, it was a very strong feeling in the body, right? Because I was asking you to see, so I was maybe taking you out of that feeling. So that's something for me to kind of remember as a practitioner. But for you, it was like, I have this feeling. Do you want to share
Yeah,
what the first thing you had when
and
you
if there's anyone
kind
listening that
of came
doesn't
in?
know what the QHHT, like she said, you can go into past lives. And I actually didn't even go into it with a big expectation that there was going to be some crazy, like a war-torn, ridiculous past life, you know, traumatic situation. I actually didn't even go into it expecting that. Maybe it's because I've listened to 15 of the 20 something books, like 20 hours each, you know, I'm hours into like listening to people do that. But I've also heard, not even just from Dolores, but other people, you know, on the spiritual side of things, talking about the whole conscious evolution, that yeah, some of this very human past lives and that trauma, it's so not even relevant to the rate that we're evolving right now, that it's not even necessary what the subconscious needs to show people anymore at this time, certain people anyways. So I didn't even go in with the expectation to have that whole crazy thing, but I didn't actually go in thinking, because a lot of the things I've heard, listened to, and read of hers, like, haven't talked so much deeply about the I never thought about it. You're listening to these stories from people's past lives, and very detailed and intricate stories, but you don't hear as much about those like body sensations. um, so I don't know if I expected that. So I think it caught me off guard. But what
Mm,
happened, for the people
yes.
listening, is like I just very the first one was it like a crazy sensation in my legs, right? But you're still awake and aware of what's going on. But I felt like somebody had just like straps came out of my legs, or somebody had glued parts of me to the floor, or not the, I'm on a massage table, but you know, glued me down. You just felt really like grounded and strongly like connected to something, but in like this heavy, like if someone had said in that moment, like, kick your legs, I don't even think I could have kicked my legs. Like they were very stuck, but it was like from the inside to out and like stuck to the ground. So people that probably do, you know, psychedelics would describe, you know, have those crazy body experiences too. But this was like, I was thinking that right after too. I was like, the one of
Mhm.
that, and then the other one, which was almost the opposite, where like crazy feelings of like what people describe coming out of that, but you didn't have any of that. You were just lying there and got into a certain state, right? So it was very, very interesting. So it was a strong, strong, like, and I wouldn't say it was painful, but it was uncomfortable because it was something you're used to. It was an uncomfortable feeling of like I was,
Yeah.
stuff grew out of my legs and went and like glued themselves to the floor is what it kind of felt like. And there was a constant tingly vibration, but like a heavy, like, I don't know if there's such a thing as like a heavy vibration. Like, it was very strange, but yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool. And I was trying to figure out what was happening, where you are. So from like a practitioner perspective, it's very interesting when people don't see the typical past life pattern. And I've had a few people kind of had like shamanic journey. They're just like, now I'm seeing this and I'm seeing this and I'm feeling this. And it's almost like, I don't want to sound too woo woo, but it's almost like spirit is like coming into your body and like giving you different feelings and visions. Like you said, as if you were on some kind of a trip of some kind of herb or plant or whatever. But we actually don't need those plants really to have a taste of these experiences. And so I was trying to figure out where you were, and I was like, did she become a tree? And I think in the end, you weren't really anything. It was really like a physical sensation experience that didn't have like more of a story to it. And afterwards, we go into the subconscious, and that can kind of explain why that happened. That's what I love. So as a practitioner, I kind of was like, okay, this is what she's feeling, and then I can ask her more details about this, you know, in an hour when we get to that other part of you. And so it's about kind of like letting that experience that you need to have happen for you, because there might never be another person who will have that same feeling in their body, right? It's like unique to you. But the physical sensations, like, do you now remember that physical
Yeah, I
sensation in your
remember
body?
the
It's like a
sensation
memory
of
that you
that,
carry forward with you,
then
right?
after that space, I guess you call it, the space that I went to and the sensation, then we went to like almost the opposite, where it's like all of a sudden that was just over. And like I said, there might have been a night sky, so I could have been the rock or the tree energy. And because I've listened to so many of her books,
Yeah.
that, you know, I know that people do go back to a consciousness of a rock or a tree, or you know, immobile things of different natures, or a very immobile animal even that's like the coral, like what's stuck to the ground, you know, as something, right? And I could have been underwater, and then there was the night sky. It was hard to know. And I think the more you do this, like if I were to do 5 more of these sessions, you get much better relaying the details, right? The detail relation wasn't so much there, but the important part was like the feeling
Yeah.
was there. And then when you ask the subconscious later, why did you show that person that feeling or space, or why did you bring them there? Then you then that helps to answer why, right? But the takeaway, so I do remember the feeling, but then after talking to the subconscious, the message coming through, like the feeling of more grounded, the feeling of security, always feeling grounded, you can always tap into that energy, that feeling. Those things kind of like overshadow just your go abouts, like your day. Like that certain messages really overshadow, and that one a little bit. I think more the one, you know, we had a lot of questions about presence and being in presence, and the repeating common thread from the subconscious message. And many of my questions was, you don't have to even worry about these things. When you stay in presence, you will know, right? Um, mhm.
And remember in the interview, you had like a few different questions about specific things around travel and money. And I said,
Well, three
you might just
things
get
have
one
happened
answer from the
since,
subconscious that
too.
answers it
Three,
all,
one that
right?
I
Like
haven't
we
even told
want
you about
10
yet because
different
it just
answers.
happened. We were just at
Yeah.
the cottage, but
Okay. Yeah.
which we can get into.
Okay.
Well, you can
Okay.
switch with the
Yeah.
sensations, I guess. So there was that sensation, and then right after that, it's like I just left, and no more night sky or whatever was darkness was going on, and that grounding feeling. And then I was up, and then I was um, I don't know if I was up. I was just in a white, bright, light space, and I don't remember this one as much because the feeling wasn't. I remember numbness. My arms were actually going numb, and my fingers are going numb, and I kept feeling like I had to like hold my hands back down because they were like raising and numbing. Yeah, well, you could see what's going. You could see my cat's doing horrible
Yeah.
things with the furniture. You almost spoke. You can't go anywhere because she was out there crying. She wanted to be in the porch room, and if I put her in, then she'll want out. Um, so that was like a feeling of like the opposite of like something pulling up, but in this different light way, not this like heaviness, right? But still like a pulling, and then like connection was the word that kept coming through. Just feeling connected, feeling supported. I felt like I was up, but like supported, but yet connected, and like there were strings hanging my body, being connected. So that was the next sensation. And then we went into that little, and that's where then finally after that, I think I was getting the thing more about like, I describe it as like looking at the back of your brain and not looking like through the, seeing, seeing around what's happening, vision, feeling. Yeah. Not with your eyeballs. Yeah. It's
Seeing
like,
with your
so here
inner
I am.
vision and not with your
I was
eyeballs.
pretty sure there
I
was
like that.
mountains,
Yeah.
and then now I think there's a stream. Like then I had surroundings. Like I think surroundings were coming through, and as you're doing it, you're still a little bit conscious. But you're like, am I just making this up? Am I telling a story? Why would I want to make this up though? It doesn't make any sense, right? So something's coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the practice. With practice, that inner questioning drops. We get more comfortable being like, I'm just going to see what I see for the next 15 minutes. And then I get to re-listen to the
Yep.
audio and ask the questions later, not like second guess myself. And that's a practice, but then that applies to life, and we get to let go and not overthink things so much in life. So that's part of like what I love about QHHT. But yeah, so you were
Mm-hmm.
getting a hang of it, and you started actually seeing
Environment,
objects
I still don't
in an
know exactly
environment
what I
and feeling
was,
a
as you know, like,
body.
I do, well, subconscious actor said animal, so probably it was an animal, um, not a human sort of experience, I don't think, because there was not a lot of cognition or like aware, but there was still, and then I went out and I watched from above what was happening, and that happens too in these, in QHHTs, and even in the more people that are going through detailed past lives, they go out and they watch. Yeah, so that was that one, and then the subconscious questions, which for people listening who don't know, like, you can ask specific questions to give the practitioner questions ahead of time that they can ask about very, specific, like, how do I end in this project, like any specific as you want, right? Or not specific, I guess, too. And then the answers maybe don't seem so specific, but they're still relevant. Although there was some specific ones, like, yeah, like I had to go on a Zoom. Was it that night or the night after?
Yeah.
I think it was that night. Yeah, I had to go on a Zoom that night with the township about the very long
That
story
night,
of things
yeah.
that went on with landlines and property sale here. And I just found out that morning that they preferred to have like comments for the Zoom submitted in writing ahead of time. So I had done that, and then versus just raising hand and talking verbally on the Zoom, which you can do that too. So they said to anyway. So we asked my subconscious, should I stick with the one in writing, or should I speak as well? And it said writing only. Do not engage in dialogue. Submitted in. Yes.
It was very clear about that too,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's interesting how sometimes it's like be present. It's like just be present, and it's kind of frustrating for the conscious mind. It's like, but I want more detail. And that one, and sometimes in the right moment, the right question, it
Yeah.
will give something super specific. So that was very interesting that it gave you a specific answer. Do the
Because talking can
writing,
get you in trouble
don't
sometimes,
don't
don't
talk
talk, right? So
publicly. It
I
was
didn't
very
talk.
specific. Yeah.
I submitted my
Mm-hmm.
comment ahead of time. And then my afternoon after I was done with you before the Zoom was busy, and I was outside and I wasn't by my phone. And someone from the township had emailed me asking to discuss my comment before the Zoom started. And I didn't even see this till 10 minutes before the Zoom. And so then we were on, so that discussion didn't happen, but the comment was submitted. And then this is a much longer Zoom than I anticipated, because they go with the case by case of all of these properties and things they have to do. And so it took like an hour and 45 minutes to get to everything. And now it's like into my night with the kids and dinner. And I was like, oh, even if I wanted to unmute and speak, like we're beyond, I had a good half an hour there, 5 o'clock. We're beyond that point now. So anyhow, so the comment was submitted, and they didn't read my comment. They said there was a comment submitted and we cannot read it. It was more of a transactional nature, and it's not relevant to this. And I felt after I heard this, I went through, because then they said, well, if the party is watching and they can raise their hand if they wish to speak, but we're not going to read this. And I did not speak because my mind was just like, it said don't speak. It said don't speak, and it was also just, it was chaos and kids. I was like, okay, no, I wasn't prepared because it wasn't the right time, and I was like, I'm not going to speak. And I felt horrible because my emotions could do that to me. I had emotionally such a down night, and I was just like, it was just one of those where, was this day or something that happened, a bad dream. Hopefully when I wake up in the morning, I feel better, and let's just get this day is done. Now the day is done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you said you
I
had
felt
felt really
wasted
really
time
down, like
crafting the
really you're like, oh,
comment,
why did
wasted
I like
time like
waste my
sitting on
time?
this
Like
thing.
this is so
I only have a
stupid.
couple
Like
nights of the
I
week
just
where
like
we're all home and the kids are
yeah.
home and I can make a proper dinner, and this ruined that night and even just emotionally drained me. I was like, like I was so upset about it. And then I woke up feeling a tad better, and then I went to work. And then right before we had another important Zoom at work, I'm so shocked I even picked up the phone because I don't really answer my phone if it's a number I don't recognize. And the number said like GHM or GMH or some random thing with no even number, And but I answered, and it was the guy from the township, and he called to apologize that he could not read the comment. He totally understands what I was trying to say, and he thinks it's really relevant that the committee hears what I was trying to say. But for my own sake, they didn't want to read it because when they read something like that, if it delves into any personal nature, it opens you up legally for that other party to do some sort of legal action for defamation or something. It wasn't even that bad of a comment, but he said, I wanted to discuss it with you first before we read it. And we still would have read it if you said go ahead, because we didn't have that discussion. And he goes, and I've been through personal issues like of this nature, working on the community of the town. He sees this stuff, and he said, he gave me basically directions. There's another Zoom in 2 weeks about the same thing to recraft a couple more comments, and then he's going to read them this time. And he does think they were valid for the committee to hear things about, don't sell a property in an act of severance. There's some learning points from the whole thing. So I felt so much better because he assured me that it wasn't because I was a moron, which is what I felt like. So yeah, so that, and then if I had verbally just gone ahead and hit the button and said what I wanted to say, read my comment, then, it could have taken a different direction. And I appreciated that, sometimes the waiting, and then I got the right advice and it was better. So that was the first thing that's happened. And then the overshadowing message of just like being in presence through many, many things is just, it's really there. It's really stuck. Like it really stuck because it was repeated for the answer to so many questions.
Right. Yeah. So I was asking Steph specific questions about different things, health, people in her family, different specific questions she had in it, her own voice. So I asked her the questions that she has for herself, and her own voice in that deep, deep, deep state of meditation after an hour of deep meditation answers the questions. And it's interesting because you were a bit concerned with like not being able to flow answers, easily because you're kind of you're an intellectual person. And while maybe in the first part of the visualizations and the experience first portion of the session, maybe were harder and you were trying to navigate that. Once we got into your subconscious, that part came in so loud and clear. Like I've seen some more quiet and kind of unsure subconsciouses. So it's interesting that it's a very open channel. It's a very loud channel for you. And hearing your own voice, allowing yourself to just speak from that part through your voice, hearing your own voice, say it to yourself, because we hear it internally, right? With like our inner hearing, we hear our inner voice talking to us, what we should do, how we should be. It's like, stay in presence, be present. You probably have that voice, but now the volume is turned up like 100
yeah,
fold and you've heard it to yourself out loud,
no, it
right? Is that
has.
what you find that
And hearing
that's
it,
really staying with
you're
you
right
now?
how like, and when I re-listened to it, the first couple questions, it was a little more shaky and unsure, but then it just started, and as I got into the mode of it, it became easier to like, because again, for the first time, you're figuring out, okay, I still have to be cognizant enough to like, I want to just listen, but like I have to put words now like to the things coming through, because it doesn't always come through as a clear word, so it takes a minute, and it's a
Yes,
slow process.
yes.
The answers take a minute sometimes, right? And but then once it was in that mode, yeah, I was surprised how I thought feel uncomfortable like talk about yourself in the third person even, but it just kind of like came out. Um, and then that one,
It's also like I think you have to hear it and then you're saying it. So you're like, that's why it takes time. You're like, you have to listen. Okay, I'm listening.
and
That's the
for people
message. And
listening, like
then you have
this
to say it,
is,
you
or
have to
watching
say it
this
out
later,
loud.
it's stuff you already know. but like you said, it's just the volume of that part. Your higher self has been turned up above what you cognitively talk yourself out of and, cause extra stress about maybe. But yeah, it just turns up that more direct, kind of the answers you almost already know, but just need the extra push to, and it doesn't tell you to act on anything, but it gives you that, but hey, follow the advice, and everything made a total 180 there after that evening following with the Zoom. And then what was the next thing that happened? Oh, work, a question about work and moving on to contract work with a different company, different things. And that night, actually, I didn't answer the phone. I didn't see till because of my Zoom and this everything else going on. It wasn't until 10 o'clock I saw a phone call from a person from that company. And I just texted, like, I'll have to call you back in the morning. Like, too many things today have already gone on. And then in the morning I called and it was, oh, hey, we have another project here, like if you're interested, and a work from home project, completely a work from home. We have a Zoom this afternoon about it. So so that was the second thing that happened. And the answer to some of my work-related directional questions were just stay, whatever makes you feel like, whatever job you're working on, whether it's contract or not, like whatever puts you into presence and whatever makes you feel like the feelings that it showed me, right? That's how that can guide you. But like the feelings guide you, stay in presence, and you will know. You don't have to put pressure on yourself about making some big decisions, because you will know when the time is right. And so hey, but you have to stay open. So you're not stressed.
Yeah, I was going to say there was that message of the worry and overthinking blocks the receiving. And so when you relax and remain open, then like the solutions and the things can just be offered to us. It can be so much easier
And then the
than
third thing that's
saying
happened
with our
since, there was a
minds that it
question
has
about
to
the
be.
trip, and I've been like hemming and hawing about, do we go on this trip next December and book it now? Because actually, so the prices have just come down even a little bit more. It's reasonable. We want to go. My dad it's very hard to get him to want to do anything. He wants to go. Everyone wants to go. But I haven't hit the book button, and we kind of have to do it now. These trip bookings offer you these finance plans, and it's complicated, and we have to figure out how we're doing it when you're a 6-person family ordeal going. Yeah, and I've been wanting to
I was
have
going to say
more
paying
serious
for all
conversations
the
with members of
children.
the
Yeah.
family, and maybe the in-laws were thinking of it, about it. And then this weekend, without me even bringing it up, my dad just went to the drawer and got out the whole, because he's been to this resort many times. He wants to go to the whole map of it, because I wasn't sure. If he wanted to go. But this weekend, he told us he's already sent in his passport paperwork because he needs to get that redone, and he's on it. And he brought out the whole map of the whole resort, and he was like, these are the rooms, and oh, should I just do this through my travel, or are you guys going to do it, and I'll help you out with 2 of the kids, and this and that, I didn't even push for it, and the conversation I'd been looking for kind of happened. And I just been stressing about whether to make the decision or not. So I think we've made the decision. So that just kind of, and because the answer it said was, don't, what it is, it said for that one, don't push to make the decision, but bring it up in a direct, you'll have direct conversations with the people involved about it, because it's just been a casual conversation so far. And you'll know, once you have those direct conversations, you'll know. And without me even trying, the direct
Yes.
conversation just happened. So
Yes, that's what I loved. That was quite specific too, because there's this underlying message of presence and not worrying. And then for that specific thing, do I book a trip with all these people I'm bringing together that I have to book ahead of time? Do I do this? How do I? And it said very clearly, don't push them, but be more direct, right? So I loved, it was like quite a clear message. It was be more direct, but don't push people, present it and like hold it more strongly, be direct, and then see the next step, without worrying again. And so it's like, okay, I'm just going to be direct and I'm not going to overthink it. Then there's like, whew,
supposed
like
to worry
the
about
energy
anything
just
anymore.
clears and things can happen.
Which not worry about anything, but I'm supposed to worry a lot less. And hearing it from your own self telling you that, I guess, and when you're listening to it back, has really helped, like, lift a weight. And I will go with it for some time now, at least, and say, okay, I will try to approach many things differently, and just watch and see, right, how it's, and then the more you practice something, right, the more it's going to be easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was So it
Yeah,
sticks
I'm
with you. And
so
then,
excited
but
to
being
see
the
the
guide, when I
session.
listen
Yeah.
back, like you have to be, you got to be thinking the whole time, and you got to be on it. And it helps when you know the person. Maybe it's interesting when you don't know the person at all. But I would think it'd be really hard if you don't know the person to continue to direct, right? Direct. I don't know, but it's that's a tough job. I was listening back when you think you're just like, oh, the person's sitting there and they're just going to ask your questions that you already wrote, but you have to do a lot more constant thinking and reverting and yeah, redirecting it.
Yeah, I'm glad you saw that and appreciate that. Sometimes I do
No.
sessions and I'm like, oh my God, people have no idea what I'm do what I'm doing. Because like the client gets a 2 hour guided meditation nap that just feels amazing. And I'm like hyper focused, you know, staying grounded, holding space, asking the right questions, trying to connect, remember what happens in the sessions so that I can then answer the questions an hour later, or ask the proper right questions to the subconscious. So yeah, there's a lot of work from the practitioner side to offer a really great session for people. And it can work. I find it can go both ways, working with friends or strangers. With a friend, I kind of know more of their background story. So sometimes there'll be things that like they haven't asked a specific question about, but I'll like know something that was a problem for them 5 months ago. Like I'm like, oh, why did that happen to Steph? Because I can remember and I know you. So I love that with friends is that I can like still pick things from their life that we didn't discuss in like this present moment. But with a friend that I'm going to be seeing again and who's like in my life,
Mm.
I feel like that sometimes will be blocked of going to certain depths. And it depends on the person, but like this can happen with family too. That if there's like certain depths that they wouldn't want to open up with someone who's close or in their community about. And that's where working with a stranger or someone who lives far away, they know they're never going to run into me again, and so they might open up to some depths that they wouldn't
That's
open
true.
up with
Yeah,
like
if
with a
there's
friend
things
or
you wouldn't
someone
want to
like that.
share per se. And I think it's almost like if you
Yeah.
have every area of your life you want all these questions answered about, you need to have multiple sessions then because, one can be very, this was more like certain questions about some specific
Yeah.
immediate things on my brain and direction and work and decisions and money and mortgage renewal, things that are just, to get into like, if I had an issue with a personal and anything else, like it would be that's a whole other, that would have been too much for one, right? So to get into things where if I had own health, if I had health issues I had questions about, or I had relationship issues, like those need like their separate thing. I feel like it would be too much for one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like it's a practice that's like good to do once a year, to like you come back once a year, you just get like super more deeply connected to your own inner experience, your inner vision, your inner hearing, your inner voice, and you kind of get recharged in that sense. And I wanted to ask you one
Mm.
last thing about the animal because that wasn't a question that you came with, but your SC, your subconscious said you were like, oh, this is how animals die. Like that, it seemed like it was a very important thing for you and on your heart, and something that we've never really talked about that didn't come out
Well,
in the
yeah, no, that was
interview, and
interesting,
then
and
and then it
obviously
came out in the
didn't
session.
talk about it in my questions or interview. And something on the forefront of my daily life and stresses isn't always like, oh, should I hunt an animal or eat an animal? Like thinking about, but in the very back of my brain, which maybe sometimes this is
Yeah.
accessing, or maybe there's a relevance to this, like we were saying for the future, and us both being like reformed vegans. There was times in my life where I felt completely passionately that you don't eat animals, and I would tell the whole world this from the rooftops, but then, yeah, I don't know, something had shifted with me, and obviously I changed my diet, but and I feel better eating this type of diet, but also in a respectful way and sourcing the best products I can and all of that. But yeah, that vision that I had was, I'm pretty sure I was in an animal body. There was uh, some commotion going on with some humans, but it's like I couldn't cognitively. That's where I think I got the feeling I was like an animal of some lower cognitive nature because couldn't hear them, didn't know what was going on. It was like I wasn't even worried about what was going on, and then all of a sudden I was up and out, and I just had known, I think, wow, I'm watching it from above, but I'm not even watching anything horrible. Like it just, like the messaging, what I kept feeling over and over again was that like spirit just leaves the body when it's time to go. And I think certain animals know that if this is what's happening and this is their place, and when their consciousness chose to come into that form, this is their place in all forms, and they just go. And it was painless, it was traumaticless, it was like, we think of them on kind of a cognitive level of us, but it's possibly not the same. And that was just, again, I don't know what lower level of animal that was supposed to be, but that was a repeated thing that was kind of coming through. It was like the energy just left. The energy just left that form, and it's like it knew why, and it did, and that was it. And sometimes I do feel guilt, like weighing guilt about like, oh, I feel bad, but I do feel healthier and better being this way. Do my best to source better products and all that, and support. All our eggs come from across the road, and the best products we can get. And with animals that I know are living a fair animal life, right? But also I have large animals that I care for now, and a couple of them are seniors, and just even the thought of when making that decision for an animal, I mean, we've all done it for our cats and dogs, but when an animal's so large, it feels different for some reason, right? Like making that decision for them too when it's time to go, because I know that time will be coming for some of them in the next few years. And you getting to decide for a creature, like how is that going to feel? I think about it a lot. So maybe it was stuff in the back of my mind, and for some reason it chose to show me this experience of when energy leaves a form, maybe a non-human form. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that because I often find that the death experience in a past life is very healing for people who are afraid of death. And I think because of all the work and study that you do, perhaps it's not like a big fear of yours for humans, um, right? But so then you got the animal experience. It's so fascinating to me. And it reminds me of like the Native American approach to when they go hunting. They kind of like say a prayer before they're going to hunt a large animal, and they ask God to give them an animal. And then the idea is that, or creator, I guess is a better word. And then the animal that is going to offer themselves to the tribe is going to step out and is going to make themselves known. Like, I am the one for you. And then there's this connection, this relationship. And it's interesting how you say that the creature's not too like attached to the whole, we as humans create this whole story. We're going to hunt them, we're going to kill them, and we can create all these thoughts and stories about it. But they don't really have those thoughts and stories in their experience, maybe, from your perspective, from what you saw. And that before the trauma of the death, they just leave. And like you said, then I think I had asked you, then does it matter like how we kill them or the intention that we have when we're taking their life? And you did say of course that matters, that does play a big role. And it plays a role, I think, in our relationship with Mother Earth and with Source and Creator, and just respecting creation. But it's not like a terrible sin, perhaps, to take an animal's life. Whether for euthanasia or
I feel a certain sense of some small lingering guilt that has always been there since, getting stuck in that space. And I have friends and people close to me that are still on that spectrum, and one's very much on the other spectrum. And, so you're hearing different thoughts and opinions about it all the time. And I'm surrounded by animals constantly. I love animals. I respect animals, and you get, it was a bit of like a stuck place. I feel maybe more like unstuck about it. I don't know if that's less guilt. Stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's more of an openness, and maybe that will give you another perspective now when you're thinking about it, or when you're working with the animals, or if at some point you have to take an animal's life, you'll have more of a like, well, I know there's this other story, and now I can kind of relate to them in a new way and just observe life. Like my big thing is, we can have this information from our experience, from our subconscious, these messages, but then we have to be present and observant to our life. Like, what is happening now? So now when you go forward and you work with animals, you can just watch and observe and take in more information, more data, integrate it, and then, digest it, and make up new
I don't think, like you said,
about
they're as worried. That was interesting about
death.
how and when they go, like they're just here in their existence, and they're a part of everything, and then it's like they don't have these thoughts we have about the worry of how or when, or am I going to die by the end of today? Like that's not a thought that they
Yeah.
have, right? But and because in the back we've had the very beginning conversations of, do we have some food animals here aside from the fish in the pond? Meat birds is a pretty easy thing to do, but cow or goats or something, throw a cow in with the horses. We've had talks about this, and then, but I'm like, I don't know if we're ready to raise something, especially a lengthy for 2 years, and then you're going to do that. So maybe that was part of just beginnings of some information and some thoughts about that. But don't feel like it's the time right now, but we've thought about it and talked about it. So yeah, that was interesting that came.
Yeah, and it was nothing we had talked about. It was like within you, right? So that's where like I find QHHT can shortcut like talk therapy and other things, because a person might consciously think, I need to figure out, like mortgage payments and like my children's health, and those are the questions I'm going to ask my therapist. And then um and then there's all the extra stuff that comes in that's still like a layer of heaviness that you're carrying in your mind and in your heart, and that can like give you extra space to then actually answer
The
like other
vegan
questions. So that's what I
trauma.
love about
Addressed my
QHHT
vegan
as a
trauma.
shortcut therapy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's a big thing right now. It's a big thing that a lot of us carry and think about. And I think it's good. It's good that we have the vegans holding us accountable and reflecting and thinking. And then we need to think, where do we stand? What's our truth? And
That's
how
what,
do
yeah,
we
I
do
think
it
there's
better if
obviously,
we are going to be
I was
taking
for
animal
7 years,
life?
and,
So,
there's
yeah.
a reason for the movement, and exactly the animal rights are a big part of it. But for our energetic selves, the connection to what you're eating and, maybe taking it yourself, and that whole part, it all is connected, right? It needs to be learned and brought to the forefront, which that movement is doing. Doesn't mean that for decades and decades, endlessly decades, we shouldn't consume any products if we feel healthy or no, but it's also good for some people to take breaks for certain amounts of time. There's so many things to it, right? But and then we have to decipher through the information we're also being told. I mean, I know we know, but for a lot of people, it's deciphering through. It's going to get harder and harder to decipher through what's true and what's not when it's coming from authority sources too, right? So that battle as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I like to hold like my inner knowing, my subconscious, like equal to what the external experts are saying. Yeah, equal or
Yeah.
above, but yeah, definitely give it big importance. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for coming
Well,
on,
thank you.
Steph. I
It
really
was such a
appreciate
good
you sharing
experience.
today.
It's definitely sticks,
And
like
yeah,
there's like a, what's the word, like the conscious on your shoulder, like something there that reminds you of the overlaying messages. I think I only even re-listened to it the once so far, but it's still very in the forefront. So maybe later in time I listen again. But mhm.
yeah, yes, definitely like try to schedule it on your phone to remind you, in 2 or 3 weeks, because you'll get more aha moments, and more, yeah, everything will just be louder and shift more deeply when you
Cool.
re-listen to
Well,
it.
thanks again. It was nice to do
Yeah.
this chat. Hopefully it helps
All right.
some people
Thanks,
learn a little
Steph.
bit more about it. Yeah. All
Yes.
right. Yeah, you too. We'll chat soon.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
All right. Have a great day.
I'm not sure I can end
Bye.
it.